So a couple of years ago, I was asked to do some sharpening classes at the Saratoga Woodworking Show. And as I was collecting my sharpening tools to put them in the car, I realized just how disorganized I was. I had stuff all over the place. So I decided to make this box here, and it held all the tools that I needed. And then the really important part is that the top has a space for the stones, but then it has a built-in projection jig. And the projection jig, this is the original one that I started using, and this is key to being able to sharpen efficiently, because if you have a honing guide and the plane iron is projected out exactly the same amount every time, then you're always on the angle that you were last time, and you can sharpen very, very quickly. When we do this in class, we've timed it, and typically from the time that my hand plane's dull, I realize my hand plane's dull, to, okay, now it's sharp, it's usually about 2 minutes and 30 seconds, somewhere around that. And part of the ability to do that is having all of my stuff in one place. So here's the new box that I made. It's got a couple different improvements to the original one. This one has the projection guide or projection jig, and the left-hand one here is for the eclipse style, or with a little insert I can use the Lee-Nielsen guide on it. And the one on the right here, I came up with distances for the new Lee Valley side gripping guide, which I particularly like for narrow chisels. I don't care for the projection jig that they supplied with it, so I like this a little bit better. There's an area here for the stones to go, and then over here is a space, and that's where my diamond lapping plate goes, or a leather strop. And so that's the top, which is also my work surface. And there's a cleat here so that when you're working on the bench, it's held right up there and it's very secure. The other thing that it has is self-adhesive sandpaper that I've put on there, and that just makes it so that it doesn't slip around while I'm working on it. It's a very stable surface. The top is plastic laminate, so it's easy to wipe off and keep dry. So that's that. So in the box here, I've designed this to hold all the tools that I commonly use when I'm sharpening. If you have different tools, then you might design the inside a little bit differently. This has the new Lee Valley side gripping honing guide, which I particularly like for narrow chisels. The regular Eclipse style guide, and then a couple screwdrivers. I have some spacers that I use for some different honing angles that I might use for specialized stuff. There's a water sprayer here. And then I have the Lee-Nielsen honing guide, which I particularly like for a lot of stuff. Here's some honing compound that I use with a strop. There's a wooden straight edge that I use, and that's to check irons, to check chisels, to make sure that they're straight and that sort of thing. And then I have a small thin scale. Some of you might know of the ruler trick, and on a couple of my hand planes I do the ruler trick. Most of them I don't, but a couple of them I do. A Sharpie I use for marking the back of a chisel or a plane iron if I have to straighten it out, and then I'll use this scribe with the Sharpie. And that's about it there. Here's some tools for sharpening a card scraper, a file, and I particularly like this Veritas holder for the file. It keeps it straight and square, and then the burnisher. Here's a small diamond stone that I use for all sorts of different things. So that's in there. And then over here, here's a leather strop that I use typically at the end of the process. Here's the Shapton ceramic stones that I particularly like. I use a 1,000 and an 8,000 grit. The two stones is usually all that I use. But these are great stones. They don't require flattening as frequently as a Japanese water stone, and They cut just as well as a water stone, and you don't have to keep them in water the way you do a typical Japanese water stone. And then here is a diamond lapping plate that I use to flatten any stones, but when I flatten the Shapton stones, it goes so quickly I can flatten in less than a minute. And if it's something that's that easy to do, then you'll actually do it. Because if it's a pain in the neck, you won't do it, and so you'll be working with stones that are bellied, and it just won't work very well for you. So that's the box, and I'm sticking with it.